Hi guys, welcome back to the Jamie Hinks Fantasy Football Network. It's back to midweek, so we've got Champions League on the way this week. Premier League just the weekend just gone. I'm going to hold off going through my lineup until the Premier League picks video later on in the week and just focus completely on the Champions League on this one. So we've actually got 4 games this midweek, all with something on them, I think. Juventus versus Porto, which is 2-0 from the first leg. I think this is the only one which could be a bit of a dead rub, just because Juve 2-0 up from the first leg, pretty imperious in that game. Porto have got quite a big suspension, Alex Tellers being out. I think Juve will walk this one just because of their home record being so good. Elsewhere, Leicester v Seville, that's a really interesting one. 2-1 to Seville from the first leg. Leicester only need to win 1-0, and of course, since that game, got rid of Claudio Ranieri. Things have really changed around there. They haven't lost a game since they got rid of Ranieri. And that game in Seville almost felt like they got a draw out there. I think Leicester could actually go through here if they're lucky and Schmeichel has a good game. Not to underestimate Seville, but Leicester on a bit of a wave right now, and I think they're a team to watch. So then on to Wednesday, Monaco versus Man City, 5-3 in the first leg. What a game that was. I mean, from what we saw last week, we know anything can happen in the Champions League. I wouldn't be surprised to see a shed load more goals here. And either team could go through for me. Both teams very, very good. Monaco, one of the best attacking teams in the whole of Europe this season. I think they've scored over 100 goals in all competitions. And then Man City, of course, hitting a bit more form since the new year. They haven't lost in a while. Probably knocked themselves out of the English title race last week by drawing with Stoke, but back to winning ways at the weekend against Middlesbrough. And Sergio Aguero is finding his feet again, who's always a good one to pick up on any fantasy game. And the last game is another, which could be another little bit of a meaningless game. Atletico Madrid versus Leverkusen. Madrid hold a 2-goal lead in that one, 4-2 from the first leg. I can see Madrid getting a lot of goals in this game again, just because Leverkusen's defence and the situation we're getting a new manager in doesn't fill me with a lot of confidence in the German side. And of course, they're actually 10th in the Bundesliga, which is pretty poor when you consider how good their team is. So I wouldn't be surprised Atletico to have a good game there. So now into my 8-man lineup for this set of games. So I have $50,000 to spend as usual on DraftKings. I've gone and picked my lineup here. So starting off in goal, I've gone for Gianluigi Buffon from Juventus, of course, 8.1 fantasy points per game. He's $5,600. I don't think he's that expensive at that price because I expect Juve to win and get a clean sheet. I think, as opposed to last week where I was in the Premier League at the weekend, where I was just looking for wins because I didn't think there was many clean sheets out there. I think that Atletico Madrid and Juventus could get a clean sheet this time round. Why do I think that? Juve 4 clean sheets in 6 Champions League games this season. They've won 5 of their 7 games in the competition this year as well. So it looks like you'll get above 10 points here. Plus Juve have got that ridiculous home record. Haven't lost at home this season. Won again last Friday against AC Milan in what was a reasonably big game. And I think you get Buffon and you start your lineup well with a good little 10-point floor there. So in defence, we're starting off with Benjamin Mendy of Monaco, he has 12.6 fantasy points per game this season, only $4,800. I think that's cheap because 6.8 crosses per game in that league this season, that's really impressive. But when you look at his Champions League numbers, 9.8 crosses per game, that's just unbelievable, I think. I think Monaco are going to attack for the entire game here. If you saw them in a few of the group stage games, Spurs couldn't cope with them out wide at all. I don't think City aren't as good as Spurs at the back. Monaco will be a little bit more nervous in this game just because it's a straight out knockout. But they only need to win 2-0. This is a team that score a lot of goals. I can't reiterate that enough. Plus, you look at Mendy, he's got 2 assists in his 4 Champions League appearances this season. He's actually only started 3 games. But I think Mendy will start this week. And I think if you look elsewhere, you look at people like Thomas Lemar as well. And maybe even Bernardo Silva. I don't think he has as much of an upside as these two. But I think Lemar in midfield, Mendy in defence. You'll be happy if you pick one of those 2 up. So alongside him in defence, I've gone for Vendel of Leverkusen, 4,400. You might be wondering why I've decided to take a Leverkusen defender. But Vendel, if you look at his numbers, 4.8 tackles per game, 4.0 crosses per game in the Champions League this season. He might pick up a few too many yellow cards, but Leverkusen are pretty much playing for nothing here. I think Vendel could be a good little attacking outlet for them because I think Benjamin Henrichs isn't playing because he's suspended. So You look at Vendel, they're pitiful defensively, but I think Vendel going forwards, there's enough here to pick him for your team. So moving into midfield, Koke of Atletico Madrid, 7,200. If you've ever watched a fantasy football video with me in before, you know how much I like him. You know how much I liked him last season. He's got assists in his last 2 La Liga games for Atletico Madrid, but rather surprised that he hasn't actually got one in the Champions League this season, considering the amount of points he manages to just tot up like all the time. He's 5 crosses per game in the Champions League. Regularly goes above that total as well. Leverkusen just cannot keep clean sheets this season, something I'll get back to later. But Koke could pick up his first assist here. He creates more chances than any other Atletico Madrid player. And I think Koke pick him this week. 7,200. If you look at some of the other players around that price, I don't think he's actually that much money. Get him in your lineup and you'll be happy. So alongside him in midfield, I've gone for Paulo Dybala of Juventus, 8,300, 12.5 fantasy points per game across Serie A and Champions League play this season. He's had double-digit fantasy points in his last 7 starts for Juve. And when you've got people like Gonzalo Higuain and Miralem Pjanic in the team, it's sometimes hard to be getting all those points, but Dybala manages it. He got a 97th minute penalty, I think it was, quite a controversial one in the game against Milan on Friday night. But another interesting stat with Dybala this season is that 7 of his 8 goals in Serie A have actually come at the Juventus arena, which is where the second leg takes place, of course. He hasn't scored that many goals in the Champions League this season, but I think you look at that number of him just scoring a lot of home goals this year, it'll give you quite a lot of confidence in picking him. He also has 6 crosses in 3 of his last 4 Serie A games, which will make you even more confident. I think you get Dybala in, and only 8,300, I don't think he's that much at that price. So we're getting to the place where the big points will be scored in your team, and there's no better place to start than Antoine Griezmann of Atletico Madrid, $8,700 on DraftKings, 12.4 fantasy points per game. That's across games for France, in La Liga for Atletico Madrid, and in the Champions League. He's on a very, very good run of form right now. 5 goals in his last 5 games, including 1 goal in the first leg against Bayer Leverkusen. Leverkusen, no clean sheets in 5 games and have conceded 4 or more goals twice in that run. Against Atletico Madrid, the 4 goals, and also they conceded 6 against Dortmund. So they really struggle when they play against teams of like real continental quality, which Atletico Madrid are one of those. Griezmann also has 8 consecutive double-digit fantasy point games. If you've watched Griezmann before, you know exactly what he's about. He can score from anywhere, he can score in any situation, plus he'll probably be on the penalties for Atletico Madrid as well if they get one, which Leverkusen, they're not beyond conceding one. And I think you'll be very happy if you pick Griezmann. I think he's online to score at least 20 points on this match day. So up front alongside him, I've gone for Kylian Mbappe of Monaco, $6,600. I think he's very cheap at this price. He has 9.5 fantasy points per game across Ligue 1 and Champions League play this season. He's only 18 years old, but he's already got 10 goals, 5 assists in 21 Liga appearances this season, which I think is absolutely incredible for someone this young who's just been thrust into the team. Scored against City in the first leg, showed some ridiculous pace in that game from that goal. 4 goals in his last 5 games in all competitions. Plus, if you look at his last 3 starts that have been scored by DraftKings, he actually has 21 fantasy points per game. The thing with this Monaco game is I think this is going to be the one where most of the goals are going to come this midweek. You go Mbappe, you could even go for Falcao. I think Mbappe has a slightly higher upside in terms of the shots personally, but I think you could pick Mbappe or Falcao and you'll be happy with your selection. So getting down to the utility position, I've gone for Wilfred Ndidi of Leicester City. Only $4,000 this week on DraftKings, 8.6 fantasy points per game. That of course includes the games that he played in the Europa League at his former club earlier on this season. But Ndidi's starting to look like the player they really hoped they were getting when they spent all that money in January. He has 3 fantasy points per game from shots alone over the last 4 games, which I think is a really, really good stat to look at. Also averages 4.3 tackles per game, which is the best at Leicester. And now he's played 7 games. It's not just like he's had that over sort of 3 games and you're looking at a skewed average. 4.3 tackles per game over 7 games is a bloody good return, if you ask me. And he also has 2 interceptions per game. I'm going to stop short of saying he's like some kind of amazing replacement for N'Golo Kante, because he's not at that level yet. But the kind of the attacking impetus that he also gives from midfield, I think, is a really interesting thing to look at. If you look at his stats from earlier on this season in the Europa League, he was a big crosser. Now he's just playing in defensive midfield, but he obviously has that attacking drive as well. And I think in a game like this, where it's going to be fine margins, you might also get something that you might even get an assist from Ndidi. And at $4,000, you'll be very, very happy with that. So looking back at my team, I've had Gianluigi Buffon in goal, Benjamin Mendy of Monaco and Vendel at the back, Koke in midfield alongside Paulo Dybala, the Argentinian from Juventus. Then getting into the forward line, Antoine Griezmann and Kylian Mbappe. And then the utility man is Wilfred Ndidi. So guys, that was my lineup for this week's Champions League contest, which get underway at 7:45 UK time, and that will be 2:45 over Eastern time in the US. And obviously then you just count the hours back for the other regions of the US as well. Please give this video a thumbs up below if you liked what you saw here. I have plenty of content coming up later on in the week. If you want to see that and be notified automatically, please subscribe to the channel. Keep sending your comments in. I'll try and get another Periscope video up on the Champions League tomorrow night if I have the time. Otherwise, please enjoy your contest this week. I hope you all win, and thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.